Lysing and our representatives to go ahead and take their places on stage. All right, well, they're getting settled. I want to thank you for being at the 2026 Decatur County Legislative Update. My name is Dawn Lowe. I'm the director for the Greensburg-Decatur County Chamber of Commerce. And I am so blessed that you are here to help take an active interest in helping shape our future here in not just our community, but our state as well. This annual event serves as an important opportunity to strengthen the connection between our local businesses, our local community, and our elected officials. It provides a platform for open dialogue, thoughtful discussion, and meaningful engagement on legislation that directly impacts our workforce, economic development, education, infrastructure, and overall quality of life here in Decatur County. We are grateful to have our state legislators with us today to share updates on current bills moving through the State House and to provide insight into priorities and challenges. Following these remarks, we look forward to an interactive question and answer session that allows you to voice your perspectives and engage in constructive conversation. I would like to first extend my appreciation to GDC Chamber Marketing Director Lily Yeager for her work in promoting today's event. Lily is in the back corner passing out some things right now. And to the City of Greensburg for graciously hosting us at Greensburg City Hall. We are grateful for your partnership and support. Joining us from the city today are Mayor Josh Marsh, Clerk Treasurer Amy Borns, and Communications Director Kristen Williams. We are also pleased to welcome Commissioners Brian Winning, and I think he might be the only one in the room today. Oh, and Gabe Nobby. Thank you. Thank you also to several city and county council members for being present. We appreciate your leadership and your service to Decatur County. Today's event is being live streamed by WTRE Radio. We appreciate their continued support along with the other media outlets in attendance today. Your partnership helps ensure transparency and access to important community conversations. And we are especially grateful to PowerStream Fiber for serving as this year's legislative update and luncheon sponsor. Thank you for investing in this opportunity for dialogue and civic engagement. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Crystal Greathouse, Communications and Member Services Manager of Decatur County RMC, a driving force behind the PowerStream Fiber Division.
Hello, everybody. Thank you to the Greensburg-Decatur County Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's legislative update and for giving us the opportunity to be a part of it. Conversations like this matter. Policy shapes infrastructure, infrastructure shapes opportunity, and opportunity shapes whether our rural communities grow or get left behind. I'm here representing PowerStream Fiber, the broadband division of Decatur County REMC. Now let's just say it plainly. Reliable internet is no longer a luxury. It's not a perk. It's not just nice to have. It's an essential as electricity was 85 years ago when rural Indiana decided to solve its own problem and build an electric cooperative from the ground up. The same cooperative spirit is what launched PowerStream Fiber. We saw members struggling with slow speeds, dropped connections, and limited options. Businesses trying to upload large files on outdated networks. Students doing homework in parking lots. Healthcare providers expanding telehealth, but not only if the connection cooperates. That's not acceptable in 2026. So instead of waiting for someone else to fix it, we did what cooperatives have always done, and we built it ourselves. PowerStream Fiber is delivering fast, reliable, and affordable fiber internet to homes and businesses across our service territory. This isn't yesterday's copper. This is future-ready fiber. That means symmetrical speeds. That means capacity for growth. That means a local team answering the phone when you call. And here's the bigger picture. Broadband isn't just about streaming movies faster. It's about economic development. It's about site selection, and it's about whether entrepreneurs can start a business from their farmhouse. It's about whether our communities can compete. PowerStream Fiber is proud to sponsor today's event, proud to partner with the Chamber, and proud to build the digital backbone our communities deserve. Thank you.
Before we begin, and with the spirit of community in mind, we would like to ask that all discussion remain respectful and constructive. Diverse perspectives strengthen us, and thoughtful dialogue moves us forward. I would also like to formally thank Senator Jean Lysing, Representatives Jennifer Meltzer, Lindsay Patterson, and Alex Zimmerman for your time, your service, and your willingness to listen to Decatur County. At this time, it is my honor to introduce our moderator, Laura Williams. Laura is the owner and sole practitioner of Williams Law Office PC, where she has successfully led her business for 27 years. She currently serves as president of the board of directors for the Greensburg-Decatur County Chamber of Commerce. Please join me in welcoming Laura Williams.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dawn, and thank you all of you for joining us today for this important legislative update that is hosted by our chamber. We are very fortunate today to have the legislators who represent Decatur County in our General Assembly with us, and we do want to welcome State Senator Jean Lysing and our state representatives Jennifer Meltzer from District 73, Lindsay Patterson from District 55, and Alex Zimmerman from District 67. This event is an opportunity for our legislators to share updates on their work this session and for our community members to engage directly with them. To ensure a productive and respectful discussion, I'd like to outline the format and ground rules for today's meeting. Each legislator will have about 10 minutes to introduce themselves and highlight the key issues they are working on this legislative session. After their updates, we will open the floor to questions from the audience. If you would like to ask a question, please approach the microphone at the center aisle and introduce yourself before asking your question. Each person at the microphone will have up to 3 minutes to ask their question, and then we will allow each of our legislators a chance to respond if they choose to do so. I will do my best to allow each of them to address the question, but we'll also be mindful of the allotted time that we have, and I may ask that more detailed discussion be held after our public session so that we can hear from as many community members as possible. If there are multiple people waiting to ask questions, please form a line at the microphone and we will take questions in the order of the line. To respect everyone's time, we will conclude the session promptly at 1 o'clock. We've got almost an hour and a half for this. And finally, as Dawn said, we ask that everyone remain civil and respectful toward both our legislators and each other throughout this event. Let's make this a constructive and informative dialogue for all involved. And so with that, I am pleased to introduce our first speaker, Senator Jean Lysing. She will kick things off with an update on her priorities for this session. Senator Lysing was elected to the state Senate in 2008 after previously serving from 1988 to 96. She serves Decatur, Fayette, Ripley, and Rush counties and portions of Franklin, Jennings, and Shelby counties. Senator Lysing is chair of the Agriculture Committee and a ranking member of the Natural Resources Committee. She also serves as a member of the Senate Committees on Health and Provider Services and Utilities. Is that right? Okay. Senator Lysing is a retired nurse, and she works as a travel agent and a farmer, and she resides in Oldenburg, where she likes to spend time with her 3 grown children and 8 grandchildren. And we do have a couple of microphone systems going up here. So one will give us sound in the room, and the other will give us the sound on WTRE. So we will try to adjust those so that you can hear from both of those. Okay. Senator Lysing?
Well, thank you, Laura, and thanks for all of you being here and sharing your time with us. I really do believe that it's important for all of you to know what we're doing because this year of all years, it seems like it's been a very controversial session, Laura. And I'm looking here wondering if I've got a green light. Does that mean it's on or not? Yes. I think it should. Yeah, okay. But actually, we had about 290 bills that were filed in the Indiana Senate. 112 of those passed out of the Senate, went over to the House. Ironically, 112 bills passed the House and came over to the Senate. Just a strange coincidence. Nothing relevant about that, actually, other than you can see a lot of ideas, a lot of bills that start never get beyond that first step of passing the first House. A couple big things that I wanted to tell you about that I was not directly involved in would be Senate Bill 1, which is, they refer to it as preventing fraud, preventing welfare fraud. But this has to do with probably more scrutiny being used in Medicaid applications, and also more restrictions on SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as food stamps. They know that there's been a lot of abuse of that. You've heard about it on national news from other states. I think there's a good share of it happening in Indiana as well. We have to make sure that those programs are there for the people who really need them and are justified in receiving them. That bill had moved out of the Senate, and they'll have to tell you if it's continued to move in the House. Then the other big one that I think people might want to know about when they go to the voting polls in November is one that takes away bail or restricts bail, and it's Senate Joint Resolution 1, and it passed in 23, the separately elected legislative body. It's an actual change in Constitution, and it actually then passed again this year, and now will be on the ballot. And so on the ballot, you're going to get to answer a question, and it's on that little paper that I handed out. You might want to read through that, because a lot of times I'll get questions from people before the election saying, I know about who's running, but I don't know about all these questions and whatever. So this is a question that will be on your ballot, and you need to answer it, whether or not you think that bail ought to be not given to those most dangerous of criminals that have been arrested. Bills specifically that I have worked on and gotten through the Senate and the House and are now awaiting the governor's signature, or for it to become law without his signature, or for him to veto it, 4 agricultural bills. One has to do with the veterinary shortage in Indiana, for especially small animal vets. Large animal vets are in short supply. We have adequate small service, small animal vets, but this is going to allow veterinarians from other states to get what we call in the health arena reciprocity. So they could come over and actually get a license in Indiana without going through all the boards. So that bill had strong support in both the Senate and the House, and hopefully the governor will be signing it in the next week. Another has to do with market development or promotion of our soybeans in Indiana, as well as pork. And what it really does is it just is a fallback bill in the event that the federal government, because it seems like there's so much that we don't know what's happening there, but the market development programs for both soybeans and pork are under federal law, whereas corn is under state law. So this would just be a fallback position if the federal government decides not to participate in those 2 market development programs. Another bill has to do with fertilizer standards. That's also another one, but this one is the feed restrictions or requirements, and that currently most of those are in rules rather than in state statute. Our governor wants things that are in rules to be moved over to code, and so that is going to make sure that, for instance, your pet food that you buy is actually meets all the national standards. So, and then the 4th one that's on its governor's desk has to do with the soil and water conservation districts, making sure that those boards are filled and that their proper reporting is done. So those are our 4 ag bills that I know for sure are headed to the governor, and hopefully he's going to approve them. Now, there are some other bills dealing with agriculture that I should mention. some of you, many of you contacted me about House Bill 1333, which put restrictions on property, and that bill is dead. So you shouldn't have to, I don't think that one can come back to life. You know, when I say that some bills are dead, sometimes they come back to life in another bill or in another chamber. But I think the language that concerned people in 1333 is gone. Another ag bill that I'm very worried about still, and it's probably going to pass out of the Senate on Monday, and that has to do with the rules around home-based vendors, farmers markets, that kind of thing. For years, there have been requirements that needed to be met in order to qualify and sell those products, some made in your kitchen or whatever. There's been, this bill expands that a great deal. It redefines small farm so that really about 90% of our farms would qualify under this definition because it includes any that have sales of up to 1.5 million. It doesn't quite make sense to me at all the way this bill was put together, but it's out there and it's moving. Another thing it does is it defines a homestead, and then it also now has brought the home-based vendor language back into it. When the bill passed the House, it actually made it illegal to have a farmer's market. I mean, crazy. That's the kinds of things that most of our people in our districts would say, but we like going to the farmer's market. So anyway, so we got to see if that bill can still be repaired. I hope that that bill goes to a conference committee. A conference committee is where 2 members of the Senate, 2 members of the House, 1 from each political party, work out the differences. And I think there are still some differences. A couple other big bills real quick, and I got to make sure I don't talk too long, 2 minutes. A House Bill 1001. It is a builder's bill. It was really promoted by the builders, but it takes away a lot of local authority, okay? I cannot, the way that is put together, I cannot support it because it really supersedes local control in so many ways over what you're doing in your communities. Another bill is House Bill 1003, and that one reduces a lot of the commissions and boards, some of which probably needed to be. But initially, as it passed the House over to the Senate, it included all kinds of things, again, ironically, that would impact agriculture. It was going to move the state chemist office to the Department of Ag. And the Department of Ag is a very small little office that only has a handful of employees and truthfully has no regulatory authority. And so that bill was amended. So depending on what the final version says, I may be able to vote for that. But it's a controversial bill. I see the superintendent here. I'm no longer on education, but I understand that a lot of people have big concerns about House Bill 1004, so maybe somebody here can better explain that bill. I think that pretty much covers the things I wanted to mention, but there's so many other issues out there. I'm on Utilities Committee, so if anybody has any utilities questions, I'll try my best. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Weissing. Next, we have Representative Jennifer Meltzer. Jennifer Meltzer represents District 73, which includes a portion of Decatur, Shelby, Bartholomew, and Jennings counties. She sits on 3 committees, make sure I'm right on this, Judiciary, Local Government, and is the Vice Chair of Courts and Criminal Code. She is also a member of the Probate Code Study Commission. Professionally, she serves as counsel at McNeely Law, LLP. Prior to her current position, she was a Deputy Attorney General in the Attorney General's office. Jenny's a proud mom to 3 daughters, June, Rose, and Pearl. She is happily married to her husband, Trent, and they are members of St. Joseph Catholic Church. Representative Meltzer?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you for spending your Friday mid-morning and early afternoon with us. As Jean said, there were 424 total bills that were still moving at the halfway mark. And a significant number of those coming from both sides have received significant amendments and changes since they went through the committees, either on the Senate or the House side. I'll use one of my own bills as an example. I sent a 2-page election that happened on Monday. I am still working through and figuring out exactly what the Senate Elections Committee did to my bill. So that happens on both sides. You'll have situations where I think Alex and I he sits on courts with me, and we'll open up the bills that come over from the Senate, and we're like, this is a really good idea, but one of them had a show cause hearing for someone who doesn't show up to their sentencing. That's not a thing. So it got amended in on seconds, probably by someone who doesn't work in the criminal justice system. And so some of the changes are just looking at them and saying, okay, we need to make this bill actually function and work in the area of practice that it's going to be applied, whether that be civil law or criminal law, whether that be an industry will come to us and say, hey, like, we don't disagree with the policy that you guys are trying to do, but we can't actually do that the way that it's written. So that's where you'll see a lot of the amendments. And then other times you'll see amendments because we just don't agree with each other, which happens, which I think might be what happened to my elections bill. So that one currently, when I filed it, allowed any municipal entity, city or town, to move their elections to even numbered years if they want to. It got amended in the Senate to include some shall language, which I do not support. So since it did not get pulled out on seconds, I will be taking that bill to conference, and we'll see if it can get to a compromise or if it will just die. I also filed a fix for resisting law enforcement. This is also something that happens. Last year, we passed 2 resisting law enforcement statutes. One of them raised the penalty, the other one did not. When you do that, if you go into the Indiana Code today and look up resisting law enforcement, you actually have 2 identical, almost identical, code sections for resisting law enforcement. One is the bill that raised the penalty, and one is the bill that added school resource officers back into resisting. So your prosecutors and your public defenders actually have 2 sections of code for the exact same crime, which does not work. So what the bill does is take both of those policies and put them into one bill so that they can both take effect. There's a legal rule that if you pass a lower penalty and a higher penalty, only the lower penalty can take effect. So technically, the one with the school resource officer in and the lower penalties is the current law, even though both are on the books. The third bill that I filed has to do with the recorders. I had recorders come to me and state that although the law today is that you can copy a document with your own device, think the phone that you carry around in your pocket, you still have to pay for it if it's in the recorder's office, and individuals were arguing that they could follow Title V but not Title 36, and the recorders just asked that we clean that up. And that bill did not get a hearing in the Senate, so unless someone decides they really like it and want to put that language in another bill, as Jean talked about, that one will not survive. And I don't like those games, so I'm not trying to move that language anywhere. And the fourth one I filed did not get a hearing in the House, but it was a food labeling requirements bill, which I sent out a survey and asked my constituents if they would support this, and overwhelmingly, I got a response that constituents like this idea. The idea is that there are ingredients in our food that are not approved for human consumption in other countries. Think Australia, think the UK, Germany. We are consuming on a daily basis. And so what the food labeling bill would have done if it had gotten a hearing and passed would have said, okay, manufacturers of all our food, think anything from chips and soda to cookies, it would actually get a label on it that would tell you that, would say this includes an ingredient that's not approved for human consumption in other countries. You can still buy it, you can still eat it, you can still put it in your lunch or for dinner, but it would just give you that information. Incredibly short session. I'm not surprised that some of these did not get a hearing. We actually shortened our session by an additional 2 weeks this year, so we will end next Friday, which is 2 weeks shorter than a normal short session, and short session is already incredibly short. It is my understanding that the House actually sent more bills to the Senate this year during this condensed short session than we have in any previous short session before. So I'm not quite sure how we physically did that, but we did. So I think there's a lot of language that got switched between the two chambers that we're not going to see get across the finish line on Friday. If there's any language that you're particularly concerned about, please reach out. I want to hear your concerns, make sure that I can voice them to my colleagues. And hearing from my constituents, especially those who work in the industry or know how this law is going to have to take effect on July 1, I guess in the real world is a way to put it, is incredibly helpful to myself and I think my colleagues. We cannot be experts in everything, and we get a lot thrown at us every day, and I've learned a ton in the 4 sessions that I've been able to represent Decatur County, but I can always learn more. So please appreciate if you would reach out, and with that, I'm going to hopefully move this along so we can actually answer your questions and not just talk at you.
Representative Meltzer. Next is Representative Lindsay Patterson. She was first elected to serve Indiana's House District 55 in November 2022. The district includes all of Fayette, Franklin, and Union counties and portions of Decatur, Ripley, and Rush counties. Patterson is a dental hygienist in Greendale. She earned an associate's degree in dental hygiene from the University of Cincinnati and a bachelor's degree in business from IU. She and her family live on their farm in Franklin County and is currently serving on the following committees: Environmental Affairs, Family, Children, and Human Affairs, and Roads and Transportation. Representative Patterson.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for that nice introduction. And thank you, Dawn, for putting this all together. Thank you all for coming out and listening. Hopefully we'll have time to address your concerns as well. Senator Leising and Representative Meltzer have kind of covered basically where we're at. So I'm just going to focus a little bit more on some of the bills that I authored and some things that are really important to me. So I authored and co-authored 9 bills. 4 of those have already gone through the House and are in the Senate, should be right now. One in particular that I want to talk about that really affects our areas is House Bill 1204. It's natural resource entrance fees. This has been an ongoing fight for about 10 years now, and specifically for me. I live in Brookville, and we have Brookville Lake, and what this bill would do is every car that drives through a state park, $1 would go back to the county of which that state or the park resides in, and that money can be used for public safety or tourism. So I think it's really important just to try to give back. Like in Brookville, our population more than doubles in the summer, but our first responders do not. So this is going to help kind of offset some of that cost. So we're really excited. Last year it got through the House and then it died in the Senate, but I think we're on a good trajectory this time around to make it happen this time. So hopefully that'll work out. I want to talk a little bit about, I sit on Family, Children, and Human Affairs. And we had a couple people come in and testify this time around. We had 2 families in particular, and they were not related, where DCS was in the home the night before after a complaint was made that they thought a child was in danger. And DCS came into both of these homes. They were there the night before the child ended up passing away at the hands of their parents. And this has just struck a nerve with me because there was a bill presented, House Bill 1318, physical examination in a CHINS investigation, so a child in need of services investigation. And unfortunately, this bill did not get a hearing, but what the bill would do is if there is a complaint and someone thinks that a child is in danger, this would allow DCS to come in, and all that is needed, this is 5 and under, they would have to inspect the child for any abuse or neglect. They have to make sure that there's running water in the home, that there is heat or just heat, and food in the refrigerator. That's the only thing that they were required to do. And DCS came back and said they did not like it, so it did not get a hearing. And I was not happy about that. So we have really pushed, and we're going to push really, really hard this next time around to make sure that that legislation goes through, or that we can get something very, very close to that. I just can't imagine that you wouldn't want to protect these kids with everything that you have. DCS kind of stated that they felt like it would be an intrusion to these children. And I just don't agree with that, because what these children are going through, that shouldn't even be a thought in their minds. So I won't speculate on what I think it really is, but let's just say that we're going to fight really, really hard for these children. There are over 60 deaths a year due to abuse and neglect in Indiana, and that's unacceptable. So that's something that's it lit a fire under me to hear that that's happened twice now in the state of Indiana. We also have House Bill 1392, and that is a bill that I authored. It is involuntary substance use disorder treatment. And what it would allow is for a family member, a friend, a parent, or a guardian to sign someone into a treatment facility if they're under the influence of drugs. And I had a little pushback even on myself. I don't do Lindsay bills, I do constituent bills. So all of my bills that I author come from my constituents. This came from a constituent. This is out of Fayette County, where they really have an issue with drugs. And she came to me and she said, I think this is really important. We've had a lot of people pass away because they wouldn't get the help that they needed. My very first thing was, you're taking away a human right to make that decision on their own. And the way that she presented it to me was, she didn't agree with that because a lot of them are not in their right mind anyway. And so I took that and okay, I can agree with that. Now, what about people who we send to treatment, maybe some tax dollars are involved, and they don't want treatment? And she said, I understand that too, but some of them just don't know where to start. So I think that's going to be something that maybe we can get moving next time around. I've already spoken to the chair of the committee that it will go through, and he said that he is willing to hear it. I think we have a serious mental health issue, and it needs to be addressed. We can't just keep kicking it down the road. So those are the things that are really super important to me for next time around. We also, in my backyard is Metamora, and we've been dealing with funding for quite some time now for the canal. It is in dire need of repair. We had, let's see, 3 or 4 years ago, they did an engineering report and came up with $14.4 million of repairs that need done on the canal. And we did secure, with the help of Senator Lysing for sure, and a lot of other people, we secured $7 million as a matching fund in fiscal year 23-24. And fortunately, just, I don't know, maybe a month ago, we were given the letter of support that the Lilly Foundation is going to match that fund. So we now have the $14 million to start the process. An unfortunate thing was that we had to reevaluate it, and now it's up to $17.5 million. But I am working right now. I have a couple avenues where we're trying to at least get the money for the boat and for a dry dock once everything is completed. So again, thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to the questions that are out there. And please, just like Jenny said, reach out. I want to hear from you all. I know we can't do everything perfect. We're not going to do everything perfect. We have a lot thrown at us in a very, very short amount of time. It's hard to understand everything if it doesn't come through your committee or it's not your bill. So, but again, I'm an open door policy, and I would appreciate all the feedback that I can get. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Patterson. Rounding out our legislators today is Representative Alex Zimmerman. State Representative Zimmerman took the oath of office in July of 2023 to represent House District 67, which includes portions of Decatur, Jefferson, Jennings, and Ripley counties. Zimmerman is an attorney and owns his private law practice in North Vernon. He earned his JD from the IU's McKinney School of Law and previously served in several roles with the Indiana Senate, including as a legislative assistant, majority legal assistant, associate, and deputy majority attorney. He resides in North Vernon with his wife, Kayla, who is also an attorney, and their son, Liam, and he serves as vice chair of Judiciary and a member of Courts and Criminal Code, Rules and Legislative Procedures, and Roads and Transportation Committees. Representative Zimmerman?
Thank you, Laura, and thanks to the Chamber for hosting us as always. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I'll just talk a little bit about my bills because I'd rather hear from all of you than hear me talk. I filed 5 bills this year, which is the maximum that we can file. And 2 of them are still moving at this point. One just passed out of the Senate yesterday, is House Bill 1249. And Laura mentioned I'm an attorney. Most of my practice is in the criminal law world. And this is a really technical piece of legislation, but it's very important, especially in big cities, Indianapolis, Lake County, Evansville. And it has to do with juveniles carrying guns. And you know, I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment, firm believer in that. But what we don't want is kids carrying guns into schools. And I think everybody in this room can agree with that. What current law says is that if you are 16 or 17 years old and you carry a firearm into school, you stay in juvenile court. And there's disagreements on both sides of this issue of whether these kids should stay in juvenile court or not. But 1249 changes that back to law from 2 years ago, so that if you're 16 or 17 years old and you are charged with unlawful carrying of a handgun as a felony, you go straight to adult court. You don't pass go. You don't collect $200. And I say that this is really important in the big cities is because what happens is you've got 4 kids in a car. One of them's got a gun, and they just start passing the handgun around to whoever doesn't have a conviction so that they can stay in juvenile court. So with this bill, we're trying to send a message to our youth. You know, one, don't carry a gun to school. I think we can all agree on that. But you know, if you're going to be carrying a handgun, do so correctly in accordance with the law for the purposes with which the law allows. So go hunting, go to a gun range. Don't take it to school. Plain and simple. And then the other bill that I've got moving is House Bill 1025. Again, I feel like I'm just filing bills to target Marion County, but that's what this bill was for. We have an attorney shortage in Indiana that's very well documented. And we have, you know, counties can impose residency restrictions on some of their employees, and including public defenders. And what this bill does is say that counties cannot impose residency restrictions on public defenders, prosecutors, and their staffs and court personnel as well. And this is not really, I hate to call it a Marion County only bill, it's really a jobs bill. I drive back and forth to Indianapolis every day from North Vernon, an hour, 15-minute commute, which I wouldn't change for anything, by the way. I don't know how, I couldn't stay in Indianapolis every day like Gene does, but, you know, we've got, with such the ability to be a transient population that we are now, I mean, I could be in my office in North Vernon and be in court in Indianapolis via Zoom. It just doesn't make any sense to restrict where our attorneys can work, and we get rid of these restrictions, you know, in the past for deputy prosecutors, city and town attorneys. It just makes more sense to continue that trajectory to allow our attorneys to work wherever they want and live wherever they want. And then I've also got a couple of bills that came over from the Senate that I think are really important. One is Senate Bill 140, is public safety bill. Gene, it started as the doxing bill, which I think we made some improvements to that. We tightened the language up to you know, tie the offensive doxing to the intimidation statute. And so if you post personal information on Facebook, so if you post Gene's name and address, for example, with the intent that Gene suffer from bodily harm, that's intimidation under this bill. And I think it's just a good common sense piece of legislation that really promotes public safety. And then the other bill, which did not get a hearing, it was Senate Bill 197. Again, a very technical piece of legislation, but it increases the wage garnishment thresholds. You know, for if you're having your wages garnished as part of a judgment, it increases the floor for which you can have your wages cannot be touched. So right now, current law is 30 times the federal minimum wage. That's about $244.50 per week, if I remember correctly. And what this bill would have done is increase it to 83 times the federal minimum wage, which is about $600 per week. And there was another related bill. I don't remember the number, but it was related to medical debt and garnishing those, collecting on those judgments. And as Laura mentioned, I'm vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, and the chairman and I agreed both those bills needed some more work. We needed some more vetting, and this was too short of a time period with the compressed schedule to be able to do those and do those properly. So a lot of good stuff going around in the legislature, but again, I want to hear from all of you, so I'm going to stop talking. But it's a pleasure to be with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zimmerman. So this is your opportunity now to speak to your legislators. We will take questions from the floor. Please approach the microphone at the center aisle, introduce yourself, and ask your questions.
No one wants to be first.
I don't know, I was gonna say, Tom was reaching for his notes. I thought he was headed up there.
Hello, my name is Matt Mobley. I farm out west of Decatur County. I'm curious about two things. The farm bill, I guess it passed and it's going up for makeup or what they call markup.
That's at the federal level. So we really don't have any knowledge on that at all.
Do you have,
We don't have anything to do with the federal USDA farm bill, unfortunately.
yeah,
I mean, I guess some people in here that follow it more closely may know. I mean, they've been dragging their feet for a long time,
long
right?
time.
Yeah.
My other question is, there's several examples of BZAs having unanimous votes and then continually going under appeal under that unanimous vote. And I think in my research, it only shows about 1% ever being changed. Is there any conversation about giving those BZAs more meat when it is a unanimous vote? We're involved with that in Rush County, and it's a year in the appeal and a $60,000 price tag with absolutely no change to the end result, which was good for us. Decatur County is going through the same thing now in the solar fields, both under unanimous decision.
I'm going to let the attorneys answer, other than I'm going to tell you that House Bill 1001 that I already said I would be voting against takes away even more authority from the locals and the local zoning.
So
And
it's trying to weaken them.
it weakens it, does just the opposite of what
Yeah.
you want. And I think it's wrong.
I
Okay.
do too.
So, but perhaps the attorneys can tell you more about the zoning.
So, the appeal process that's set up for your BZA, because your BZA is going to be hearing a variance, which means that you are asking the Board of Zoning Appeals at the local level to grant you as a property owner to do something different than what is in the zoning code. So if they vote unanimously to allow you to have that variance, that means that your property has gotten the right to look different than all of your neighbors for one reason or another. So the appeal process that is set up in the BZA code currently is meant to protect you as a landowner if you're denied that variance, so you have your due process rights to then take that on an administrative appeal to the trial courts. And an administrative appeal, that is, was it arbitrary, capricious, abuse of discretion, or contrary to law? So those questions would then be at the trial court level. Yes, an appeal means hiring attorneys. Yes, it means an expense for the local unit of government, an expense for the property owners. It also is guaranteeing that a second set of eyes as a judicial officer is looking at that, and that the courts are actually reviewing it. Your BZAs are generally local individuals who are appointed to that board. Sometimes you'll have an attorney on the board. A lot of the times you will not. So this puts a legal set of eyes on it to say, was the decision that was made, was it proper under the procedures and layout under your own planning code and variances? So is there a way to alter that or change it? Possibly, but my concern would be with the due process rights and making sure that your property rights are being protected.
No, I think Representative Meltzer is certainly the expert on administrative law and the zoning issues that was panel. But I would also be concerned with the due process issues as well that Jenny had talked about.
Brian Wenning. I appreciate your thoughts, Gene, on the House Bill 1001, because we do want to have that local government oversight over that, especially in 1333 that was voted down, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so both of those are important to us as county to have home rule, for us to be able to use that locally instead of having the state oversight. And so I do appreciate that. I hope that 1001 gets voted down.
Yeah, I hope so. It did pass out of the House. I know that I thought it was going to get killed in a committee. Now, why it was in the Senate, see, the bills can be assigned to different committees, okay?
Right.
So like when I spoke about a couple of the ag bills that I had concerns about, I chaired the ag committee, but they weren't assigned to me. If they were assigned to me, I could have solved, hopefully, with amendments, the problems that we saw within them, but they were assigned to other committees. In the case of 1001, it was assigned to the Judiciary Committee, not to a committee like Commerce or local government.
Which would make more sense.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. If you or I were assigning it, that's what we would have done.
Right.
So on Wednesday afternoon, there in the Senate, there was a big debate over House Bill 1001. And one of my compatriot senators that keeps me abreast on the Senate judiciary issues, because I'm not an attorney, she thought going into the meeting there was a chance for them to kill it. Okay, there, which would have been wonderful. The vote ended up 6-5, it passed. But only because someone that's second in leadership in the Senate pushed really, really hard and convinced a few of the new members of the Senate that they better be voting for it. And so they caved in. I will tell you, I've been around a while, and sometimes in this business, you got to be tough. And even if somebody really important says you should, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should represent the people you represent.
I agree.
And so it's tough. But anyway, so that bill passed out of Senate Judiciary 6-5. It will come to the floor for second reading amendments on Monday, because that's the last day for amendments. But honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. Depending on what happens with those amendments, there's a chance that it will be defeated. I think the governor's people, the Builders Association, those folks all want it. And so it'll determine, how many people can be influenced. And then the other thing is, because there has been at least some amendment to the bill in the Senate, in that committee that I'm not on, even though it didn't fix it completely. It will likely have to go to a conference committee when it comes back over to the House, because there's changes. And as I mentioned before, conference committees, 2 senators, 2 representatives, 1 from each party of both, and they have to duke out the differences. If they can, the bill dies. If they can, then we each, the Senate and House, have to vote again on that bill. I honestly, it'll be interesting to see if these guys think whether it'll survive or not, but it's really against the locals, okay? And
It
I'm not
is. It just
sure
erodes our control of.
I don't know why. In my years in the legislature, I've never seen so many bills that were against local control, okay? So many things. I mean, for the mayor here, I didn't even get into some of the issues they have to deal with. I didn't get into the fact that we have a 661-page Department of Local Government Finance bill that I can guarantee you.
And you're a tax and fiscal committee out of 100 pages to, I might add.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm not on that committee, but it's something you all.
But let me pipe in, because I think this is an important discussion, Commissioners. appreciate you bringing up the question. And I'm not going to speak for Lindsay or Jenny on this, but you brought up 1001 and 1333, and I voted for both of those bills. If you ever been to watch a sausage making factory, it's not pretty how the sausage gets made, and that's exactly how the legislative process is. And so with 1001, and I'll just say, if it comes back to the Senate or to the House, unless it's substantially better, I'm not against it.
I concur.
It's a very pro-builder bill, and I understand the intent of the bill. We've got a housing shortage in Indiana. We really, affordable housing. The average age for first-time home buyers is 40 now. We need more affordable housing in the state of Indiana. 2001 was geared at getting more affordable housing in the state, but the erosion of local control piece I had a big problem with. And same thing with 1333. It started out as a very well-intentioned bill, if I remember right. Did it go through your committee, Jen? No, it went through utility. It started out, if I remember correctly, as a bill to reinstate the sales tax on data centers. So a number of years ago, before I was in the General Assembly, they they said data centers don't pay sales tax. So it started out as a very well-intentioned bill, and then through the legislative process, it got messy. I supported the bill because the author promised us in the House that he'd work with the Senate to fix it or kill it, and he did that. And so I won't speak for my colleagues, but I've put a lot of trust in my colleagues that when they say they're going to either fix it or kill it, for lack of a better term, I put a lot of trust in that. And at least with 1333, that's what happened. And I'm thankful that is what happened.
And I'll touch on that just a little bit because there was so much controversy regarding that bill. In all honesty, it was a wonderful bill. It had very good intentions. And I've said this in many, many meetings since then. Kendall Culp, who was the author of the bill, he has been a farmer since 1978. He is the vice president of the Indiana Farm Bureau. He has so much integrity. And to sit down and talk about that bill and what that bill did to his mindset in general is just sad with such a good intentioned bill. His whole intention was to redevelop. It was a redevelopment land use bill. It was never intended to be a data center bill or to strip that local control, which is one of the very most important things to me is local control. And I will piggyback on Representative Zimmerman that absolutely, if that bill, if 1001 does not come back properly vetted, I will not vote in favor of that bill. And that's the thing. We always have the opportunity if it starts in the House, it ends in the House if it doesn't die during conference committee. So chances are that bill is going to come back. And if it's not what you like, you vote against it. That's why I love hearing from my constituents because, again, we cannot know everything, but little things start to come out and you realize when things are fed to you, they're fed as we need more housing, we need more housing. And that is a very true statement. But over time, you start to realize, wait a minute. Okay, so that's stripping this or that's stripping that. And then promises get made, we'll fix it on this side, we'll fix it. And I know the senator has talked about that. We do the same thing on both sides. Again, the beauty is that when it comes back, we have the opportunity to say no. I am very saddened by what 1333, how that happened and how that played out, because I will leave it with this, that now, even if Kendall decides, even if the author decides to, because it is it's pretty much a dead bill. If he brings it back in January of next year, it will not go into effect until July 1st of 2027. So that gives a year and a half for data centers to know that short of local control, they can buy your prime farm ground and build a data center on it. So the intention of the bill was to stop that from happening. It was to develop land, brownfield projects, that have been sitting empty for a very long time, that have old factories on them from the 80s, and nobody's developing that property. There was a lot of good in the bill, and unfortunately it got very misconstrued on social media. So if there's ever questions, contact us, ask us, instead of reading what's on social media, ask us. We're the ones that we write this stuff. We understand it. A lot of it's meant to be confusing, unfortunately. But the intention of the bill was very well intentioned.
I'm going to briefly add to that because I also voted for those two bills. 1001, Speaker of the House stuffed down, got on the floor and spoke in support of it. There is politics back home and there is politics in that building. And if we want to pass something, we have to understand both. So I had spoken to the author. I had been in meetings with the speaker about 1001, explaining from my knowledge and experience as a local government attorney, all of the problems with it. And I had been told that it would be fixed, that we were in a negotiation process, that what is happening in that bill was not going to be what we saw when it came back from the Senate. So again, trust the author, trust your leaders, trust the Senate. We trust, and I think they have some trust in us when they send stuff over to us going, hey, we know this needs to be worked on, that we're gonna work on it. None of us wants to pass bad policy at the end of the day. As far as 1333 goes, this is the current state of the law, and this happened in Michigan City, is that if someone shows up and a piece of land that they want to develop is already in a place where it is zoned correctly, it is annexed if they want it annexed, and has the right number of acres, and they offer that person a certain amount of money, and the farmer says, yep, I'm willing to sell to you, and they sell and they do a private transaction. They then show up and they walk into your planning and zoning director's office and they go, here's my ILP permit request. I'm going to build this structure. I meet all of the setbacks. I meet all the buffers, all the berms. I meet everything that's in your code. I don't need a single variance. That planning director has no choice but to go, here is your permit. You're going to follow all of our ordinances. You're completely in compliance with the law, and you're not asking us for anything. This happened in Michigan City. They showed up. They had a building that they thought was going to be not a manufacturing, but like a warehouse, right, for Amazon or someone else to have trucks coming in and out. And the building director shows up to do their initial investigation, and they're like, hold on, this doesn't look like a warehouse. This looks different. What are you building? Oh, we're building a data center. They hadn't told them. Not a single word. So they issued a stop work order, which they got a ton of pushback on because they had no reason to do so. They were completely in compliance. And they started negotiations. Eventually they wanted a tax abatement, so they were able to negotiate. But if they didn't want that tax abatement, they could have continued. 1333 set up a process where when they got that sales tax, they had to go negotiate with the locals. So they had to come tell the locals what they were doing. And that was the part of it that I was like, I think the locals should know if you're building a data center. I think you should have that right. And that wasn't the current state of the law. And so that was the part of it, and trusting Kendall to fix all the other issues and seeing that there was going to be a forced conversation, I thought that was a positive.
I just want to say that my goal is never to vote yes on something that really needs a big fix, okay? Because I've been around long enough to see that the bill they were referring to, Representative Kolb, he wanted to fix it before it ever left the House. But the committee chair didn't allow him, okay? So sometimes, you know, you have to understand that people say, oh, we'll take care of it, but maybe not. And that's a serious concern. And I would tell you what Jennifer said about political power. I would tell you that I think in the House, they have to succumb more to power by the Speaker of the House, Houston, than what I have to with pro tem of the Senate, Bray. He's a good man, and he listens to us. And he does not normally push anything down our throats. And so I think that it's a different makeup of the leaders, and, God bless these guys is what I'm going to tell you, because I think they're getting pushed on a lot of things. And I hope that we'll hear somebody talk about education, because none of us are on the education committee. And I know that there's some volatile bills out there, but she's next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Victoria Martz. I'm a constituent of Ms. Patterson and Ms. Lysing's here. I'm also a Democratic candidate for Ms. Patterson's seat. You are all talking a lot about House Bill 1333 here and how it was intended to protect prime farmland, but there was no language in that bill that talks about prime farmland. The only language in that bill talks about making it automatically rezonable for soil quality land that is a 4 through 8 rating. So there's nothing in there about protecting prime farmland. It was all purely holding out brown soil, or brownfields as you called them, as essentially meat to wolves and taking that power away from local zoning boards. So I just wanted to say that. And as our current representatives, I wanted to remind you all have the only power in this room when it comes to these bills. As a criminal defense attorney myself, I understand a lot of times it's hard to speak up for your client's position or the person you're representing's position when you're getting a lot of pushback from the other side. But you are the one with ultimate power to push back, to say no. And if any of you thought that that bill was not perfect, you should have voted no. We can't just trust people in our everyday lives and trust that they're going to do the right thing when the power lies with us to say, I don't have to just trust you, I can say no. And so as your constituent right now, I would ask you all to vote no when legislation comes like this before you again in the future. And talking about this portion of this law, the 1% that was going to go back to communities where data centers were constructed, do you really feel like that's adequate for the amount of natural resources that a data center would be consuming and the amount of our taxpayer funds that are going into rebates for these data centers already through the bills that were passed back in 2019 and 2020? Does it really feel like 1% of that overall value of those tax rebates coming back to the local community where it's constructed is adequate? I've talked with a lot of people on the ground out here about this data center issue, and I would say on behalf of other people that are your constituents as well, we all feel very strongly that that 1% is pretty piddly compared to the overall value that they are taking from our communities in the form of natural resources and the amount of money that they're taking from us in the form of these tax rebates. So I just wanted to really convey how important and how concerning this issue is to your constituents, that we really protect these local government's oversight.
I'm going to address one of your questions, Victoria. The 1% sales tax, no, it's not adequate. But I've also asked, is that better than what locals are getting now? And the answer is absolutely. It would have been better than what the local governments are doing now. And I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but if you're in the legislature, your word is everything. And we put a lot of trust in each other. That when we say we're going to fix something, we mean it. And with Kendall, we took him at his word. He's going to fix it. He meant it. He killed it. He killed the bill. Senator Cook killed the bill. And we're appreciative of that. But if it came back and it wasn't fixed, as I said in 2001, I'd vote it down in a heartbeat because it was not a good bill. But the sausage-making process of lawmaking is not always as pretty as Schoolhouse Rock makes it sound.
Well, I do want to ask off of your statement there that if it hadn't been fixed and it came back, isn't it true that once a bill is passed by the House and it's passed by the Senate with no amendments, it goes straight to the governor's desk at that point? It wouldn't have been coming back to you.
Yeah, but I put trust in the author of the bill and the sponsor of the bill, Senator Cook, who we called before we even called it on third reading, and he said, we're going to fix it or we're going to kill it. So when I say I put a lot of trust in members of the General Assembly, I take them at their word, and if they go back on it, we have very long memories at the General Assembly.
I hear you. So do I. But as your constituent, again, I'm just asking you to please.
You've met your 3 minutes.
Oh,
so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Lorm. Thank you all for being here. change gears here a little bit. There are several other states that are doing this already, and there are several states around us that are looking at doing this. Online gaming and raffle sales. I think this would be a huge revenue stream for the state of Indiana. Not only do I think this, I know this. Other states are seeing 100 million plus in revenue streams for doing these kind of things. There's a House bill out there, 1078 by Representative Manning, that has authored this bill. I'm a little confused on some of the wording that's in there. I actually got an email and conversation coming from him, so I can discuss this with him a little further. But that bill authorizes the online lottery sales incentives potentially to address this during the 2027. So I also think it should include the raffles regardless of the product type, and to raise money for a good cause. This would be a huge benefit for profits and nonprofit businesses alike. So if I wanted to raise money for a good cause and have an online raffle for a Rolex watch and sell tickets, that money could go to a good cause. So there's so many businesses out there that want to do something like this, such as myself, have lots of ideas for doing things like this. Nonprofits, hospitals, raise money. Those types of revenue streams would be huge for our community and the state. But the way our current laws are in Indiana, we can't do that. So just a little food for thought on that one.
Fine with online gaming so long as we tie it to a brick and mortar that checks your ID and then ensures that you are an adult that is making an adult decision to gamble. What I don't want is my 12 and 14-year-olds to be able to get on their phones and all of a sudden tie it to mom or dad's credit card or that bank account card that we're giving our children now, because so many places are cashless so that they can, still go to the football game and buy a Coke. That I don't want to then be tied to online gambling. So as long as the proper parameters and safeguards are put in place, and I want some of that revenue to then go towards addiction for gambling, I want to make sure that we're protecting people if they do end up with an addiction, that we have proper support and treatment and ways for them to get that treatment. Then yeah, I'd be fine with it. But
Yep, and I agree.
I don't know that it has the votes in the House, to be honest.
It does not right now. You're right.
It's a very regulated industry, gaming is, and the one gaming, since we brought up gaming, that was moving, I guess, yesterday in Senate Appropriations, is that there's probably going to be another casino in Indiana, and it will likely be either in Fort Wayne or up in the northeast corner in Steuben County. Those are the most two likely locations. In order to do that, they took away 2 off-track betting potential licenses that were out there but weren't currently being used. Gaming is extremely complicated, and most of you probably don't know that our Shelbyville casino, that is very nearby here, that helps make sure that we have a viable horse racing industry in our state. That and the one in Anderson, the 2 racinos. It's very important that the next casino isn't too near either of those, because it will damage them. And most people don't know that if it wasn't for Shelbyville and Anderson racinos, the big facility at French Lick, it receives a subsidy from those profits of those 2 casinos. So it's a very complicated, connected industry, but I haven't heard anything in the Senate at all about online gaming. So I don't think there's a push there.
Didn't pass out of the House, Jane.
Huh?
It did not
No,
pass.
I know, and nobody's talked about it there. So, but thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Are we going to get some education questions?
Possibly could happen.
Because we really need advice on how to vote, because I will tell you guys, I mean, I serve on 5 committees, but I'm not on education anymore. So if you aren't on a committee, you might not know exactly what's in some of these bills.
Well, thank you for all you're doing for the state of Indiana, but just a couple things on education. One, when I look at your pamphlets, I see that education now takes up 40%, 47% of the state budget,
It does.
down from 51% of the state budget only a few years ago. And on top of that, out of that 47%, it's also funding the vouchers and all the charter schools. So when we look at traditional public education, our funding is greatly being reduced with extremely large amounts of increases in cost to us. On top of that, the fact that almost every, especially rural community, is losing students every year, and we're losing because we're just having less kids. My kindergarten classes were averaging 160 kids per class just a few years ago. Now the last two have been 110. So those numbers are going down in almost all rural communities as just students. So our funding through tuition support is being reduced. Now we're looking at tax issues with our operations funds. We're looking at possible down the road decreases in our local income taxes are going to impact us. You know, Greensburg Schools is looking at over the next 3 years at least probably $700,000 to $800,000 decrease in our funding available to our schools from reduction we have. You know what? We'll make that work. You know, I knew a lot of it was coming, and we're going to be prepared, and we're going to make it work. But the way we're going to have to make it work is we're going to have to probably do away with a few things. Maybe some programs that we do, maybe class sizes may have to increase, some of those things that we really don't want to happen. But the reality of it is, we, like everybody else, city government, state government, we have to balance a budget. We understand that. So, you know, I just want you to understand all of these decreases, they impact us greatly. They impact our kids. And I think if you talk to a mayor in any city in Indiana, or probably even at the state level, you guys see it, you know, our schools in Indiana are one of our greatest assets that we have for economic development. You know, people are very proud of North Decatur High School, South Decatur High School, and Greensburg High School here in Decatur County. And I think we put out a great product. We put out a product that we want to provide opportunities for our kids to come back to our communities and help our communities flourish. But there is a limit to how much we can take as far as reductions in our funding. The other two items that you probably have an interest in is how we feel about, you know, the two big issues are the cell phones in schools. That's a huge issue. And the other one is social media. And, you know, we're in favor probably of both of those bills overall. The biggest concern we have is how do we implement it? And that is something that is discussed across the state. I am the vice president of the Superintendents Association, so I have a lot of conversation with a lot of superintendents across the state, and I don't know too many of them that are opposed to limiting the impact that social media has on our kids, and also, you know, the issue of cell phones in our schools, especially in our junior highs and high schools. But how we go about doing that is it's going to be a real time management issue, and in some cases, it's going to be another cost that we have. And the one thing I would say as superintendent of schools is please, please, please limit any of these unintended costs to our district. Because every time you add another $100,000 in cost to a district, you're definitely reducing one teacher salary within that district. So,
if I can, I just want to tell you that the reason that budget went from down to 47%, I've been watching it every year and concerned about it. Medicaid, the health insurance for the lower income, is stealing away education money, is what I'm going to tell you. That's where the big shift has been. And so you would first say, geez, well, why is that? Well, I'm hoping that Senate Bill 1 is going to get at fraudulent claims against those things. And you'd say, well, why would Indiana have fraudulent claims approved? Well, you know, there was this little thing called COVID a few years ago. And everybody, I think, that applied pretty much got accepted. And then there's lots of jobs out there now. Maybe they shouldn't all be accepted now. So I'm hoping Senate Bill 1 gets at that so we can see that change in the money. in regard to the cell phones, I have to bring up to you, I voted against the cell phone bill because we already have in place no cell phones during academic instruction in the classroom. That's already a law. So one of our senators brought up, who's going to frisk the kids when they come into school if the bill passes that takes them away from the time they walk in the door until they leave? Who's going to frisk them? Because, you know, if I'm in high school, I'm going to say, hey, I left it in my car. Just a little white lie, right? And so seriously, I don't know how it would work, and I don't know how you're going to make it work. And that gets into the cost thing then. Who's going to be responsible for enforcing it? I think that from my perspective, that I'm kind of tough. I would say if I were the teacher in the classroom and some kiddo was using their phone, I don't know what the right recourse would now be in school, but in the good old days, it would be send them to the principal's office, tell them to take their phone. But, I know life has changed. And then in regard to the social media stuff, all of these kids are hooked on it already. And their parents maybe need to be more engaged. And I don't want to say it's all the parents' responsibility because maybe the companies have, in fact, enticed these kids. But the truth is, I don't know how you can patrol that in school either. So that bill, we stopped in the Senate to begin with, but I think it is in a House bill that's going to come back to the Senate. But I did vote no. I was one of, I think the cell bill in the Senate only passed with 27 or 28 votes out of 50 because a lot of us had concerns about how you would enforce it. But
Just keep in mind, the most important thing to every school district right now is funding.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll follow up on the education. Good afternoon. I'm Linda Smith, a longtime teacher at North Decatur Elementary, and 3 of you, up to 4 of you, have already been in my classroom. And Senator Lysing has asked to have a time to visit, so she'll be coming soon. But on February 10th, I had the privilege of visiting the State House and meeting with several senators and representatives. I left the day with a much greater appreciation for all the work that you do and the responsibility that you carry on behalf of Hoosier students and families. I met with Senator Good, who was very kind and very helpful. He gave me wise advice. He suggested that rather than try to solve everything at once, I should identify 3 key elements. Work with the legislator to try to fix those, and then move on from there. Prior to the State House visit, Senators Yoder and J.D. Ford participated in a Zoom call with my class, and after speaking with the students and hearing their thoughts, we met with my administrators. We discussed areas that we believe improvement is possible. Senator Yoder asked me to help her develop a proposal. Senator Yoder and I met again at the State House when I was there, and we agreed to begin working on a literacy initiative after the session is over. If you serve on the Ways and Means Committee or the Education Committee, or know that someone that does, please encourage them to reach out to me or another educator for ideas of practical input. There are many low-cost or free things that you can do to support students and teachers. While strengthening our schools, educators want to be a part of it. Thank you for your time and your service and your willingness to listen. Because at the end of the day, the future of Indiana is not in this room. It is in our classrooms all across Indiana. And those children are trusting that we make the right decisions.
I just got to say this, I really appreciated visiting your classroom back in November, I don't remember when, but I really appreciated visiting the classroom, and I even more appreciate the books that I can take.
You got one more coming tonight.
Great. So thank you for engaging your students with us.
My kids are very excited. I know that one of them at least will become a legislator because they know all of you. And then when they timed me on this speech, and they said, so do you need us to help you write it again? I said, no, I think I got it. So they've been very involved. Thank you.
I'm curious if anybody is concerned about immigration policy in Indiana and how it impacts people. You are, right, sir? Come up to the mic and what would be your major concern that we might be able to impact in the state? A lot of it's federal.
Right. I work for a Holzbosch family dairy out here at Letts. They are our family of immigrants, came here in 2005. Out of our 81 employees, we have about 35% immigrants, all vetted to the teeth. Of course, the family has an interest in making sure all their employees are vetted. In fact, Thursday before last, we had a roundtable meeting with representatives from Banks and Young and Micah Beckwith and Mesmer and several people there talking about immigration. Our biggest concern at our dairy and most farms, I think about 80% of the food comes across your plate is handled by an immigrant at one point or another. We can't do without them. Without a doubt, there are farmers out there employing illegals. Many of them have no choice. The neighborhood boys won't do it. The girls won't do it. They have to get it done or they go broke. We feel that we're not in that position, but the H-2A employees that come to the United States, their spouses aren't allowed to work. In fact, their spouses don't even have an ID. So if the father's child has to go to the hospital, he has to stop work to go to the hospital because the mother doesn't even exist in the rules of the law. And just that kind of scenario.
And you were able to talk to the federal guys about all this, right?
We had a scheduled 2-hour meeting and it's 3.5 hours long.
Good.
But yes.
Good. And I know I was invited, but I
Yes.
couldn't make it. But there is an immigration bill at the state level that's come back to the Senate. It's Senate Bill 76. And it talks about prohibiting Indiana employers from knowingly or intentionally recruiting, hiring, or employing illegal immigrants. And it references the E-Verify system. And I just wanted to confirm with you, and you probably know better than me, if you guys use E-Verify?
From my understanding, the E-Verify is primarily for contracts that have state money involved. And it has very little to do with the private industry as of yet. But I believe they do utilize the use of it at the dairy.
Well, and I would just tell you that if you use E-Verify, I've been told that you have to hire the person first and then you use E-Verify, which seems backwards, you guys, if you have any influence on your federal congressmen and senators. And then the other thing is, though, that you need to know, under this state law that is likely going to pass, it will give the attorney general, if they find an employer has violated hiring immigrants, the AG can pursue a lawsuit against the employer. And that also then if the court finds an employer violated the law, they can suspend the operation for a period of time, depending on the number of violations. So this Senate Bill 76, although it's a state law, it will impact in addition to whatever the federal law is saying. And you attorneys know anything more about that law than I do, other than the summary?
What I would say, and Senate Bill 76, as it came through judiciary, if our Congress would enact meaningful immigration reform, we really would not need Senate Bill 76. I truly believe that. 1980, was that when the Immigration Reform Act was in the 80s? It's been 30 plus years since Congress has meaningfully tackled immigration. I think I can speak for all 4 of us up here. If you came to this country legally the correct way, we want you in this country. But there's a line. If you follow our laws, we want you here. If you don't, there's consequences for that. That's federal law. The state cannot change federal law. That takes an act of Congress. So I think my last word on this would be if we want meaningful immigration reform, Congress needs to get involved and stop letting the executive branch rule by executive order, which it seems to have increased quite a bit for the last 26 years that I've been involved, or that I've been, really paying attention to government.
Mayor, I see you standing back there. Please come forward and tell us what your concern is. I know what
And
time's
I will
about.
say, we are approaching the 1
Yeah,
o'clock
yeah.
hour, and we
So
do
you
want
got-
to respect everyone's time, but we do have time for one more
Yes.
brief question.
Well, first of all, thank you all, as always. Appreciate your continued support of Greensburg, Decatur County, and our region. I didn't have a question. All of you have been very accessible to me, as always, and I am grateful for that. Thanks for the continued hard work. I know there's been a lot of challenging discussions and legislation over the last few weeks, and I look forward to working with all of you as you continue to make improvements to that and over the summer break. As always, we continue to stress the need for return to revenue source, revenue funding as we deal with the impacts of Senate Enrolled Act 1. The local income tax piece is a big conversation. I know there's some changes happening as that bill moves through. Our team is very concerned about the continual delay of knowing where it is that we have to meet. The goalposts kind of keep moving, and it's hard to build budgets when that happens. But
And I guess I would just ask you if you had any chance to look at the rough summary I had of the DLGF bill, the 661-page bill.
yeah, I think there's probably a lot of room for still improvements in there. The annual adoption piece being removed is very helpful. I assume that's going to make it into an amendment. That seems to be the case. And then, we will work through the process of working with Decatur County to see if there's an opportunity for a county-wide rate like we have now versus different income tax rates for different people that live in different parts of the county. I do think that's helpful. And then, of course, making sure that we have a long-term sustainable funding source and plan does make all the difference as well.
So you think it's worth a yes vote? Do you think it is worth a yes vote if it's 661 pages and most of us don't know everything that's in it?
Well, I always caution on the vote for it, and then we'll find out what's in it.
I don't want anybody to call me Nancy Pelosi or whatever, But I mean, that is actually what it sounds like when you see a bill that's that thick.
Here,
If it makes you feel any better as I look.
What's that?
The document is 600 pages, but the bill is only 300. So just if that makes you feel better, they've got to read it. Yeah.
Big difference.
It's not as long as it seems.
Yeah.
here, the piece that applies to us, I don't know what's in the other 640 pages. The pieces that apply to us on the delay of implementation is very important. That's worth a yes vote, probably, in the sense that Jenny smiles, because probably.
Just amazing.
I know.
Because
it really helps us, Josh.
I know. Because we do need the information that is not available yet from the Department of Revenue to base what the rates would be. So we do need the delay in implementation. Although that is not, that's not helpful to us for planning purposes. We operate on a 5 to 10 year capital improvement plan. So 2026 is already underway. So we're already into 2032. At this point, and we don't know where we're going to be in 2029, 30, 31, 32. That's where the probably is yes, we need the delay. It probably makes sense to vote for it. I do not know what's in the other 640 pages. Good luck.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you
I
all.
just got done saying I don't like to vote for anything if I don't know what it is.
Well,
And this is one I don't know if it's worth killing Representative Zimmerman, because maybe it'll go to conference committee and maybe you'll be on the conference committee and you can get rid of 500 pages
Well,
of
I
it.
guarantee the bill will go to conference committee, but I also guarantee I will not be on that conference committee.
The digest is only 4 pages.
Yeah, I brought along a fiscal summary and it's multiple pages, but anyway.
And
thank you,
with that,
guys.
we do want to thank all of you for attending today. We want to thank all of our legislators for your time today and for your service to our communities. And if you do have other questions that were not addressed today, some of our legislators may be able to spend a few minutes here after the meeting, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dawn.
We want to thank you again on behalf of the Greensburg Decatur County Chamber of Commerce and our Board of Directors for being active participants not just here today, but in our community in general. So thank you very much for your participation. For those who stepped up to the microphone today, we appreciate your comments and questions. And with that, please have a great and safe weekend. Thank you.